So, at its core, imposter syndrome is the idea that you are not worthy. You are not worthy to be doing what you're doing. You are not worthy of praise. You are not worthy of acknowledgement. You are not good enough. And basically, there's this expectation that sooner or later somebody's going to come along and say, no, I'm sorry, you're not actually good enough to be an artist. You have to go and work in a normal job. You're not good enough to be a composer or a filmmaker or a director or an actor. And as I said, it happens in all sorts of fields. You're not good enough to be a scientist. You're not good enough to be a doctor. You're not good enough to be an engineer. Because humans have these deep-seated doubts. So those doubts can become quite strong, a strong internal voice that basically makes us doubt who we are, what we are doing, and whether we are worthy to do what we do and get any acknowledgement. Let's just say I'm talking to three colleagues, and we're all working in audio production. So we all have our different areas of expertise. We've all got our areas where we know a little bit more than the average, let's just say. So the person whose expertise is in mixing and mastering, they're talking about mixing and mastering. And I'm watching and listening to this person talk. But as I watch, the other two, they're nodding their heads. They're nodding their heads in agreement. They're nodding their heads wisely. Oh, yes. The statements that you're making, yes, I agree with what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. And I'm probably nodding my head as well. I don't understand a lot of what they're talking about because it's not my areas of expertise. I might understand a little bit. So I'll nod my head very, very enthusiastically when I understand a certain bit. But I don't understand, let's just say I don't understand 70% of it, but I understand 30% of it. But I'm watching the other two and they're nodding their heads all the time. And I'm like, they must understand all of this, or at least they understand more of it than I know. And then one of them starts talking about dialogue editing. And the other two are nodding their heads sagely, and I'm kind of nodding my head a little bit. And again, I'm looking at them going, well, he knows a lot about dialogue editing, and she knows a lot about mixing, but they're all nodding their heads at everything. Oh my God, they all know about dialogue editing, and they all know about mastering. And then when I talk about the thing I know a little bit about, which might be sound design, and they're all nodding their heads again. Oh my God, they all know about the thing that I know as well. So what I've done is, even though person A knows a lot about one subject and a little bit about the other subjects, and person B knows a lot about a different subject and a little bit about other subjects, maybe sharing with person A, and person C knows a lot about a subject and a little bit about the other two subjects, what I've done subconsciously is I've assumed they all know all the subjects at 80%, and including the subject that I know about at 80%. And so I'm sitting here going, well, I know one subject at 80% and all these other subjects at 20%, but everybody else knows everything about every subject. It's an insecurity thing. We can't read other people's minds. We don't know that when person A is talking about mixing and mastering, person B and person C are going, well, okay, it's the first time I've heard that, didn't know that. They're nodding, etc., and they because they won't often say, hey, that's really interesting, I know nothing about that, because we're fearful. We're fearful of being vulnerable. And I'm just going to jump in for a second. I have literally had people reply to some of these videos and say, thank you so much for being vulnerable, for talking about things and being prepared to say you don't know or you don't understand, because so few people will actually do that. People are terrified to present themselves as being vulnerable or to openly say, I did not know that, I don't know, because showing weakness is something they fear that they will be, attacked, or they might miss out on a job, or they'll be seen as being less competent if they show weakness. And so we have this situation where everybody's sort of pretending on the surface to be knowledgeable, but underneath they have the same doubts that you and I have every single day. They might know some things, but they don't know everything. And so when you're honest to yourself inside your own head, you're like, I don't know these things, but everybody else does. And so it makes you feel like an imposter. It makes you feel like you're not worthy. Imposter syndrome can be really, really negative because it can stop people from going for positions that they're really qualified for because they don't think they're good enough. It can stop people from going and asking for a raise that they really deserve because they don't think they're good enough. They don't think they deserve it. There are lots and lots of videos these days about imposter syndrome, and if you feel that way, I would really, really encourage you to investigate it, to look into it, because you are absolutely not the only person who feels this way, and there are ways that you can deal with it. I mean, I think there's a positive to imposter syndrome. It stops you coming across as being an arrogant jerk. But by and large, I think imposter syndrome can be quite negative. So I would encourage, if you feel that way, to look into it and explore it a little bit, because the odds are you probably know that you are good enough to be doing something. You are good enough at what you do, and you should always be learning anyway and developing your skills. So don't be afraid of imposter syndrome, just be aware of it and investigate it a little bit if you feel that it's something you need to look into more. Hope this has been helpful.